Right. Ever think about a world where, like, America's still under British rule? You know, everybody's sipping tea and bowing to King George.
Hmm.
What if, like, Napoleon never even came to power
Yeah.
and Europe just stayed this, like, crazy mix of kingdoms and empires?
Right.
Sounds kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
But that could be what we're looking at now.
Mm.
If one prince, like way back in 1745, had gotten what he wanted.
That's right. We're going deep on this one. The story of Bonnie Prince Charlie and the Jacobites.
Ooh.
Last civil war in Britain.
Wow.
And this wasn't just like a little footnote in a history book.
Oh,
This
yeah?
thing almost like totally changed the entire world.
Wow. And we've got some amazing sources for this one.
Yeah.
We've got Dan Snow's podcast. He talks to Murray Pittock,
Right?
who like wrote the book on this period. Literally, it's called Culloden.
Yeah,
We're going to be pulling out all the coolest, most interesting stuff.
absolutely.
Give you a front row seat to this crazy moment in history.
Yeah. It's a wild story, like daring gambles, surprising military tactics,
Oh, wow.
this web of like loyalties that goes across countries.
Well-
You'll find out how an army of Highlanders almost took down a whole kingdom.
Wow.
And the brutal stuff that happened afterwards,
Yeah.
it changed global history.
So, okay, let's start with who were the Jacobites.
Okay.
What were they fighting for?
So basically they were like super fans of the Stuart dynasty, the kings, you know.
Right.
They got kicked out back in 1688, Glorious Revolution, remember that.
Okay.
They believed that the rightful heir, like the real king, should have been James II's grandson,
Okay.
Charles Edward Stuart.
Yeah.
You might know him as Bonnie Prince Charlie.
Monty Prince Charles.
But,
But it wasn't just like bring back the king kind of thing, right?
no, not at all.
The Jacobites weren't like all on the same page?
Nope, their reasons were all over the place.
Okay.
Different regions, religions, politics, you name it.
Okay.
Like in England, a lot of them were Tories. Right.
Felt left out, you know? Wanted to go back to the good old days.
Okay.
Didn't trust the new Hanoverian kings, those German guys.
So didn't like the establishment and wanted to go back to simpler times.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, up in Scotland and over in Ireland,
Hmm.
the Jacobites, they wanted more freedom.
Okay.
They saw the Stuarts as a way to push back against England.
Right.
I mean, especially in Scotland.
Yeah.
They had only been part of the UK for like 40 years at this point.
That's so interesting how it was different, like in different parts of the kingdom.
Yeah.
So then you have Bonnie Prince Charlie, this young guy
Yeah.
with like an impossible dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of charm.
Oh, yeah.
And he lands in Scotland, right?
He does.
With a tiny group of men.
Tiny.
How does he convince these like hardcore Highland clans to risk it all and join him?
He had this like aura, you know, people just believed in him.
Right.
And he was a really good military leader, even though he was so young.
Wow. And his early wins, they were small, but they gave his followers this confidence boost.
But I read that some of the clans were like hesitant at first.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What changed their mind?
A couple of big early wins.
Okay.
You know, people think of the Jacobites as this disorganized group, like
Right.
wild Highlanders,
Yeah.
but they were actually really well equipped, surprisingly.
Oh, wow.
And they were disciplined.
Okay.
They used tactics like the Highland charge.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like charging downhill, swords out,
So scary.
broke through enemy lines before they could even react.
So they weren't just like yelling and swinging their swords around.
No.
There was like actual thought behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a strategy.
So then they win at Preston Pans, right?
Yes.
Just outside of Edinburgh.
Huge win.
That must have freaked out the British.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Then they capture Edinburgh.
Right. But
The castle itself was still under government control.
that's right.
Okay, so now what?
Yeah. Huge dilemma.
What do they do?
Stay in Scotland, solidify what they got,
Right.
or risk it all and go south into England.
Whoa, that's a tough choice.
Big decision.
What did they end up doing?
Well, Charles,
I just-
ambitious, right, believed he was the rightful king.
Yeah.
He insisted London was the key. That's how you really win.
So they went south, even though some of his advisors said, don't do it.
Yeah, it was a huge gamble. Even the British were surprised.
Wow.
And what's crazy is they marched all the way to Derby,
Okay.
less than 130 miles from London.
So close.
People were freaking out in the capital, fleeing.
Oh, wow.
Thought the Jacobites were going to take over.
Can you imagine the chaos?
Total chaos.
But then just when it seems like, okay, they're going to win,
Right.
they turn around.
Yeah.
Why? What happened?
It's the big question, right? Historians have been arguing about it forever.
Yeah.
Seems like a few things happened.
Okay.
One, the French help they were promised never showed up. Two, rumors started going around about English reinforcements coming.
Oh, no.
Three, even the Jacobite leaders were fighting amongst themselves.
Oh, wow.
Some said go back, some said keep pushing to London.
It's almost Shakespearean, isn't it?
It really is.
This big decision, ambition versus being practical, and then boom, their fate is sealed.
Right, but there's this myth about a double agent, Dudley Bradstreet.
Okay.
People say he tricked Charles into retreating,
Right.
but historians have kind of debunked that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, seems like it was way more complicated than that.
Okay.
A bunch of strategic stuff and internal pressure all came together.
So not just one moment that messed everything up.
Exactly, it was everything all at once.
It's crazy how that one decision changed everything
Big turning point.
for them and for British history.
Yeah, massive consequences.
I think this is a good spot for us to pause and to take a breath.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, we'll get into the next part of this story. The retreat from Derby, the battles that came after, and finally the battle that ended it all for the Jacobites.
The final battle.
So stay tuned.
All right, so we're back, diving deep into the Jacobite uprising.
Yeah.
We left off with Bonnie Prince Charlie.
Right.
And his guys.
Yeah.
They were running low on supplies, facing a ton of pressure.
Yeah.
They had to make this tough choice,
Right.
turn back from Derby and head north back up to Scotland.
That must have been so tough on morale.
Oh yeah,
Like they're so close to London,
so close.
and then they have to retreat.
brutal.
Yeah.
The retreat was grueling, man.
I bet.
The Duke of Cumberland and
Yeah.
his British troops, they were right on their tail.
Oh, wow.
But even though the Jacobites were tired,
Right.
running out of supplies,
Yeah.
they still showed like amazing resilience.
Wow.
And they were smart tactically.
Yeah.
They even managed to win a few more battles.
Really? I don't get how can a retreating army still win?
They were masters of the land, you know.
Oh.
They used it to their advantage.
Right.
Like there's this one Battle of Falkirk Muir,
Okay.
January 1746.
Okay.
They're outnumbered,
Yeah.
but they used the weather, the landscape.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, they totally outmaneuvered the British.
Wow.
They inflicted heavy losses,
Yeah.
and for a little bit they stopped Cumberland right in his tracks.
So even while retreating, they were still dangerous.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the tide was turning against them, you know.
Yeah.
Cumberland was a ruthless guy.
Right.
He was methodical.
Yeah.
He wanted to crush this rebellion once and for all.
Right.
And he had all the power of Britain behind him.
Yeah.
Better weapons, more troops.
Speaking of, the whole Britain versus Scotland thing,
Right.
it wasn't that simple, was it?
Not even close.
We talked about it earlier,
Yeah.
but I'm still not clear on who was loyal to who.
It's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the Jacobites had a lot of support in Scotland and Ireland.
Right.
But there were Scottish people fighting on both sides.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there are reasons for fighting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was religion, sometimes politics, regional stuff.
It's like a big mix of everything.
Totally, yeah. Like you could have Scottish Highlanders
Right.
fighting for the Jacobites
Okay.
alongside English Catholics.
Uh-huh.
And they're all united against these Hanoverian kings.
Okay, so it wasn't just Scotland versus England.
No, not at all.
There were people from both sides fighting for both sides.
Yeah, it's all mixed up. The lines were blurred.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's not always good guys and bad guys, you know.
Right. That makes sense.
It's messy, like a lot of conflicting interests.
Yeah.
Different loyalties.
Yeah. What about Glasgow?
Glasgow.
Yeah, I heard they refused to support the Jacobites.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Prince Charles, he got some supplies from Glasgow during the campaign, but the merchants there, they had a lot of money tied up with the government.
Right.
So they mostly stayed loyal to the crown.
So even within Scotland,
Yeah.
not everyone was on board with the Jacobites.
No, not at all. It was a really divisive thing.
Okay.
Like families were split, communities were divided.
Right.
Some people, they saw Bonnie Prince Charlie as a hero, like a liberator.
Right.
He was going to bring back the real king. Scotland was going to be free. But
Yeah.
others, they thought he was dangerous, like a rebel,
Right.
a threat to the whole kingdom.
It's interesting to think about
Mhm.
how even a revolution, even if it's for a good cause,
Yeah.
can still divide people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And as the Jacobites kept retreating north,
Right.
things got pretty desperate for them.
Okay.
Less supplies, morale was dropping,
Right.
and Cumberland, he was getting closer.
Okay.
He wanted to end this thing for good.
Yeah.
And that's what led to Culloden.
Right. Culloden.
Yeah, this battle that would decide everything.
They would decide the fate of the Jacobites.
The fate of the Jacobites.
It's like synonymous with the end of the Jacobite dream, right?
Yeah.
So what happened leading up to that battle?
Well, by April 1746,
Okay.
the Jacobite army was in rough shape.
Yeah.
Exhausted from months of fighting.
Right.
Not enough food, not enough ammunition.
Yeah.
And they were outnumbered.
Yeah.
The British had better equipment.
Yeah.
They really needed a big win.
Okay.
So they picked Culloden Moor.
Okay.
It's pretty flat, pretty open land near Inverness.
Okay.
They thought it would give them an advantage against the British army.
Okay, but looking back,
Yeah.
Culloden might have been a bad choice for a battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, from what we know now, probably.
Right.
It actually helped Cumberland.
Okay.
All that open space meant he could use his big guns, all his firepower. The Jacobites, they were used to using the terrain to their advantage.
Yeah.
But here, they were just out in the open, vulnerable.
It's almost like they led Cumberland right to them.
Yeah, it does kind of seem that way. And Cumberland, he was a smart guy.
Right.
He planned everything carefully.
Okay.
Ruthless, determined. He wasn't messing around. He had studied the Jacobites.
Oh.
He knew how they fought, what they were good at, what they weren't.
So the day of the battle, what happened?
It was brutal, man.
Yeah.
Total chaos.
Yeah.
The Jacobites, they were starving, tired.
Right.
They charged at the British lines.
Okay.
For a minute, it looked like they might actually break through.
Wow.
But Cumberland, he was ready for it.
Oh, no.
He had his troops fire this massive volley of musket fire.
Oh, man.
Just mowed down the Highlanders.
It's, you mentioned they had cohorn mortars.
Yeah.
What are those?
Basically like lightweight cannons.
Okay.
But they were designed for sieges. They could fire these explosive shells way up in the air.
Oh, wow.
Do a ton of damage, kill a lot of people.
So they used those at Culloden.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
They were just raining down explosives on the Jacobites.
That's terrifying.
Absolutely huge casualties, total chaos.
Yeah.
Can you imagine charging into battle?
Yeah.
And then suddenly there's muskets firing and these shells exploding all around you.
Yeah, it's no wonder they call it a massacre.
It was awful. It really shows you how brutal war was back then.
Yeah.
The Jacobites fought hard, but they were outmatched.
Yeah.
Their charge was broken. They had to retreat.
Oh, man.
So many dead, wounded.
So what about Bonnie Prince Charlie?
Yeah.
What happened to him during all this?
His commanders told him to run
Okay.
to save himself for the sake of the cause.
Okay.
It's something historians still argue about today.
Yeah.
Some say he abandoned his men.
Right.
Others say it was the only smart thing to do.
Yeah.
A hopeless situation.
Right. Can you imagine seeing everything you fought for just crumble?
Yeah.
Your supporters dying, having to run away knowing you've lost.
It must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it gets worse.
It does.
After Culloden,
Yeah.
Cumberland, he wanted to make sure the Jacobites were done for good.
Right.
He unleashed this wave of terror on the Highlands.
Really? Like what kind of terror?
Executions, villages burned, Highlanders driven from their homes.
Wow.
They called him the Butcher for a reason.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just about stopping the rebellion.
No.
It was about like wiping out their culture.
Exactly. He wanted to break their spirit, erase who they were.
Yeah.
They banned Gaelic, their traditions.
Wow.
The Highlands, they were targeted. They wanted to destroy their whole way of life.
It's so sad how often violence leads to more violence.
Yeah.
You win a battle and then you just create more suffering.
Right. It's like a victory that hurts everyone in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it just creates anger and division that lasts for generations.
Absolutely. And in the Highlands, Culloden and what came after, it really left a mark.
Yeah.
It shaped how Scottish people saw themselves.
Right.
And it fueled this resentment toward English rule that lasted for centuries.
So even though Culloden was the end of the Jacobite uprising,
Yeah.
it also created problems that lasted for a long time.
It did, yeah. It shows that history is never simple, you know.
Right.
One thing happens, and then it sets off a chain reaction.
Yeah.
Sometimes you try to put down one rebellion, and it ends up creating more unrest later on.
Okay, so we talked about the battle.
Yeah.
But what about Bonnie Prince Charlie?
Yeah.
Did they catch him?
No, he got away.
He did.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story.
Oh, wow.
He disguised himself as a woman.
What?
Yeah, and he managed to stay hidden for months. He
Whoa.
had this network of supporters.
Right.
They risked their lives to help him.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a dangerous journey.
Yeah.
Lots of close calls.
Wow.
But he finally made it to France.
Okay.
And that's where he lived out the rest of his days, in exile.
So he went from a prince who almost became king
Yeah.
to a fugitive hiding for his life.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild story.
It's a sad ending, though.
Yeah, there's this sense of what could have been, you know? But it's a story that really captures your imagination.
It does.
It does.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
From Bonnie Prince Charlie landing in Scotland.
Yeah.
To Culloden.
Yeah.
And all the horrible stuff that happened after.
Yeah, brutal stuff.
But our deep dive's not over yet.
No, we're not done.
When we come back,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about the big picture.
Yeah.
Like how the Jacobites affected the whole world.
Right.
The legacy they left behind.
Their impact on history.
Yeah. So stay with us. Okay, so we're back, and we've been talking about Bonnie Prince Charlie and the Jacobites.
Right.
We saw them come so close to taking London.
Yeah.
We saw the defeat at Culloden and everything that happened after.
Yeah, it was rough.
But like we've been saying, this wasn't just a British thing.
No, not at all.
The Jacobites, they affected the whole world.
They really did. The impact of this uprising, it went way beyond Britain.
It's crazy to think about how something happening in Scotland could change things globally.
Well, you got to remember, back then, the world was already pretty connected.
Right.
You had these big powers like Britain and France.
Yeah.
They were always fighting to be on top.
Right. Always competing.
And the Jacobites, they got caught up in the middle of it.
Right, because France wanted to use them to weaken Britain.
Exactly. They saw it as an opportunity.
So what happened after the Jacobites lost? How did that affect things?
Well, for France, it was a big setback.
Okay.
They lost a chance to cause trouble for Britain.
Right.
And that meant Britain could focus on other things.
Like what?
Well, they started to put more energy into their colonies, especially in North America.
Oh, okay. So this is all leading up to the 7 Years' War, right?
You got it.
The big one, that changed everything.
Exactly.
And that war, it led to the American Revolution.
Right.
And the French Revolution.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
The Jacobites lose, Britain gets stronger, they win the 7 Years' War, and then boom.
Revolutions everywhere.
Exactly. It shows how one event, even if it seems small, can have these huge consequences.
It makes you think, like, what if they had won at Culloden?
Ah, the big what if.
Yeah, what would the world be like now?
It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe Britain would have been stuck in a civil war, weakened.
Okay.
Maybe France would have taken over North America.
Wow. No United States as we know it.
Right. It's wild to think about.
Remember we were talking about the Holy Roman Empire?
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy to think that if things had gone differently, they might still be around today.
It's possible.
No Napoleon, no changing of all the borders in Europe.
Totally different world.
It's like looking into a parallel universe.
It really is.
It just shows how even a failed rebellion like the Jacobites,
yeah,
it can still have this massive impact on history.
Absolutely. It reminds us that history isn't just a bunch of facts and dates.
Right.
It's about choices, actions, and the consequences that come after.
Yeah, and understanding the past helps us understand our present.
And the possibilities for the future.
Exactly.
So think about it. What's happening today that might seem small,
Right.
but could end up changing the world?
Yeah, what will people in the future look back on and say, that was the turning point?
What were the dominoes that started it all?
Yeah, it makes you really think about the world around us.
History isn't just something that happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's happening right now.
This has been an amazing deep dive.
It has been fascinating.
We've learned so much about the Jacobites and how they changed the world.
Absolutely.
If you want to learn more, definitely check out Murray Pittock's book, Culloden.
It's a great read.
And who knows, maybe you'll come up with your own what-if scenario.
Your own alternate reality.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.